We commence today's Satsangh with a prayer by Sapna Ganesh, followed by Muktakatrayam by Sri Nandakumar sir.
दक्षिणामूर्तिसारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमां रमणाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्परां वन्दे गुरुपरम्परां वन्दे गुरुपरम्परां शुक्लाम्बरधरं विष्णुं शशिवर्णं चतुर्भुजं प्रसन्नवदनं ध्यायेत् सर्वविघ्नोपशान्तये आङ्गिकं भुवनं यस्य वाचिकं सर्ववाङ्मयम् आहार्यं चन्द्रतारादि तं नमः सात्विकं शिवम् ॐ नमो भगवते श्रीरमणाय. Namo Ramana to everyone.
Ekam aksharam Rubinirantaram Bhasate Swayam Ilikyate Katam Hridaya Kuhara Madhye Kevalam Brahmamatram Yaham Maham Iti Sakshat Atmarupena Bhati Hrudi Vishamanasa Swam Chinvata Majjata Avanachalanodha Atmanishto Bhavatu Deham Brahmaya Jadatmakam Aham Buddhirnatasyastyatu Naham Tattata Bhavashukti Samaya Siddhatma Saddhavata Koham Bhavayuta Kuto Varadhiya Drishtatmanishtatmana Soham Spurtitaya Arunachala Shivaha Guru Vibhati Swayam Soham Spurtitaya Arunachala Shivaha Guru Vibhati Swayam. Namo Ramana.
Namo Ramana. We will now have the chanting of Upadeshasaram by Uma and Ashwin.
नमो रमण इदमहं पदाभिक्यमन्वहम् अहमिलीनके प्यलयसत्तया विग्रहेन्द्रिया प्राणधीतमा नाहमेकसत्तज्जडं यसत् सत्त्वभासिका चित्त्ववेतरा सत्तया हि चित्तया ह्यहम् ईश जीवयोर्वेषधीभिधा सत्स्वभावतो वस्तु केवलम् वेषहानत स्वात्मदर्शनम् ईश दर्शनम् स्वात्मरूपत आत्मसंस्थिति स्वात्मदर्शनम् आत्मनिर्द्वयाधात्मनिष्ठता ज्ञानवर्जिता अज्ञानहीन चेत् ज्ञानमस्ति किं ज्ञातुमन्तरम् किं स्वरूपम् इत्यात्मदर्शने अव्यया भवा अपूर्णचित्सुखम् बन्धमुख्यतीतं परं सुखम् विन्दति जीवस्तु दैविक अहमपेतकं निजविभानकम् महदिदं तपो रमणवागियम् नमो रमण
Namo Ramana. We now present to you Ramananjali music by Srimati V. Radha, which will be followed by Pratibha Sundaresh.
Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. This is a English translation of Sri Muruganaswamy and Dr. A.S. Venugopal Rao composition, adapted and set to music by Dr. Shah. Ever fresh he keeps my spirit, Ramana the daylight bringer. Ever fresh he keeps my spirit, Ramana the daylight bringer. Sadguru, the Sadguru, my Sadguru, Ramana the daylight bringer. Ever fresh he keeps my spirit, Ramana the daylight bringer. Guru Ramana, my Sadguru, Ramana. Guru Ramana, my Sadguru, Ramana. Cool breeze that plays with the summer sun's might, gentle moonshine on a dark, fearful night, bird song that wakens the dawn's first light, is Ramana, my Ramana, Ramana the Sadguru, Ramana, Ramanaya, Ramanaya, Ramanaya Namo, Ramanaya Namo, Ramana. Ramanaya Namo, Ramanaya Namo, ever fresh, he keeps my spirit. Ramana, the daylight bringer, Sadguru, the Sadguru, my Sadguru. Ramana, the daylight bringer, rainbow that peeps through a thick cloud, dewdrop that sparkles in its misty shroud, the fragrance of earth that is freshly plowed is Ramana, my Ramana, Ramana, the Sadguru, Ramanaya, 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 Ramanaya Namo, Ramanaya Namo, Ramanaya, 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 Ramanaya Namo, Ramanaya Namo, ever fresh, he keeps my spirit. Ramana, the daylight bringer, Sadguru, the Sadguru, my Sadguru. Ramana, the daylight bringer, Guru Ramana, Guru Ramana, my Sadguru, Ramana, Guru Ramana, Guru Ramana, my Sadguru, Ramana. His sister's sweet laugh as she plays tricks and darts, the melting of hearts when dear ones do part, a caress that springs from a mother's tender heart is Ramana, my Ramana, Ramana, the Sadguru, Ramanaya, 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 Ramanaya Namo, Ramanaya Namo, Ramanaya, 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 Ramanaya Namo, Ramanaya Namo, ever fresh, he keeps my spirit. Ramana, the daylight bringer, Sadguru, the Sadguru, my Sadguru. Ramana, the daylight bringer, ever fresh, he keeps my spirit. Ramana, the daylight bringer. Thank you. Namo Ramana.
Om Namo Ramana. We will now have Srimati V. Radha presenting Ramana Sangeetam. Radhanti, please unmute yourself.
Namo Ramana all. I'll be presenting a song of Sri Sadhu Swami, and the music is by Sri L. Krishna. அண்ணாமலை தனிலே அமர்ந்திருக்கும் அரசே, அண்ணாமலை தனிலே அமர்ந்திருக்கும் அரசே, ஆனந்தமான வாழ்வை அடியேனுக்கு அருள் செய்வாய், ஆனந்தமான வாழ்வை அடியேனுக்கு அருள் செய்வாய், அருள் செய்வாய் ரமண தேவா, அருள் செய்வாய் ரமண தேவா. எங்கும் நிறைந்திருந்தேன் ஏகமாயானவரே, எங்கும் நிறைந்திருந்தேன் ஏகமாயானவரே, ஏகம் நிறைந்த என்னை இன்பம் அடைய செய்வாய், ஏகம் நிறைந்த என்னை இன்பம் அடைய செய்வாய், அருள் செய்வாய் ரமண தேவா, அருள் செய்வாய் ரமண தேவா. சொல்லி விளக்க உன்னை சொற்களுண்டோ உலகில், சொல்லி விளக்க உன்னை சொற்களுண்டோ உலகில். ஜோதியுள் ஜோதியாக ஜொலிக்கும் சுயச்சுடரே, ஜோதியுள் ஜோதியாக ஜொலிக்கும் சுயச்சுடரே. அருள் செய்வாய் ரமண தேவா, அருள் செய்வாய் ரமண தேவா, அருள் செய்வாய் ரமண தேவா, அருள் செய்வாய் ரமண தேவா. ரமண தேவா ரமண தேவா, 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 ரமண தேவா ரமண தேவா.
Namo Ramana. The next presentations will be by Savitri and Jai Shri Ram, which will be followed by Revathi Shankar's Ramana music presentations.
Dawn is rising on Aruna hill, sweet Ramana, come Arunachala come. Dawn is rising on Aruna hill, sweet Ramana, come Arunachala come. In the bush the koel sings, dear Master Ramana come. In the bush the koel sings, dear Master Ramana come. Lord of knowledge come, Lord of knowledge come. Dawn is rising on Aruna hill, sweet Ramana, come Arunachala come. Dawn is rising on Aruna hill, sweet Ramana, come Arunachala come. The conch blows, the stars are dim, sweet Ramana, come Lord God of gods come. The conch blows, the stars are dim, sweet Ramana, come Lord God of gods come. The cocks crow, the birds chirp, it is already time. Come, come, the dark night has fled. Come, come, dawn is rising on Aruna hill, sweet Ramana, come Arunachala come. Dawn is rising on Aruna hill, sweet Ramana, come Arunachala come. The trumpets blow, the drums beat, gold bright Ramana come. The trumpets blow, the drums beat, gold bright Ramana come. The crows call, it is one, snake-decked Lord, come, come. Blue-throated Lord, come, come. Dawn is rising on Aruna hill, sweet Ramana, come Arunachala come. Dawn is rising on Aruna hill, sweet Ramana, come Arunachala come. Sweet Ramana, come Arunachala come. Sweet Ramana, come Arunachala come. Om Namo Bhagavate Shri Ramanaaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Shri Ramanaya. We are meditating on the 34th verse of Saddarshanam. Hritprapya saddham nijaswarupe स्वभावसिद्धेनुपलभ्य निष्ठां मायाविलासः सदसत्स्वरूप विरूपनानैकमुखप्रवादाः. Instead of firmly abiding in the heart, in one's own true nature, To quarrel, real or unreal, with form or formless, many or one, is to be blinded by illusion. There is something hard. It melts when in mouth. White in color changes the taste of anything which we use. It melts when heated. Many things are said about sugar like this. But to explain this to a person that the sugar is sweet is very difficult unless the person puts it in his mouth and experiences the sweetness. How much ever you explain, it doesn't work. When you put it in your mouth alone, it works. The experience of the sweetness is felt. Likewise, the self has to be experienced alone, which cannot be explained or argued or anything other than experiencing becomes illusion. So, having faith on Bhagavan that He will take us to the heart, to the self, and make us the self someday, I present you this song, a song by Sadhu Om Swami, Kannada translation by N.S. Lakshminarayana Bhatta, music by Upendra Kumar. ಕರೆವ ಒಂದು ದಿನ ರಮಣ ಗುರು ನನ್ನನು ತನ್ನೆದೆ ಗುಹೆಗೆ ಕರೆವ ಒಂದು ದಿನ ರಮಣ ಗುರು ನನ್ನನು ತನ್ನೆದೆ ಗುಹೆಗೆ ನೋಡಿಯು ವರ್ಣಿಸಲಾಗದ ಸುಂದರ ದರ್ಶನ ದೊರೆಯುವ ತಾಣಕ್ಕೆ ಕರೆವ ಒಂದು ದಿನ ರಮಣ ಗುರು ನನ್ನನು ತನ್ನೆದೆ ಗುಹೆಗೆ ಹಸಿಬುದಾಹಗಳೇ ಇಲ್ಲದ ಸ್ವಾರ್ಥ ದ್ವೇಷ ತಮಸಲ್ಲದ ಹಸಿಬುದಾಹಗಳೇ ಇಲ್ಲದ ಸ್ವಾರ್ಥ ದ್ವೇಷ ತಮಸಲ್ಲದ ಎಲ್ಲೆಲ್ಲಿಯೂ ಶ್ರೀ ರಮಣನ ಮೌನದ ಎಲ್ಲೆಲ್ಲಿಯೂ ಶ್ರೀ ರಮಣನ ಮೌನದ ಕೊಳಲು ನುಡಿವ ಕೇವಲ ಪದಕ್ಕೆ ಕರೆವ ಒಂದು ದಿನ ರಮಣ ಗುರು ನನ್ನನು ತನ್ನೆದೆ ಗುಹೆಗೆ ನಿದ್ದೆ ಕನಸು ಎಚ್ಚರ ಇರದ ಜ್ಞಾನ ಸೂರ್ಯ ಹೊಳೆಯುವ ಕಡೆಗೆ ನಿದ್ದೆ ಕನಸು ಎಚ್ಚರ ಇರದ ಜ್ಞಾನ ಸೂರ್ಯ ಹೊಳೆಯುವ ಕಡೆಗೆ ಮೈಮನವಿಲ್ಲದ ಅನಂತ ಭಾಗ್ಯದ ಮೈಮನವಿಲ್ಲದ ಅನಂತ ಭಾಗ್ಯದ ಜೀವನದಲ್ಲಿ ಜೊತೆ ಬಾಳಲಿಕೆ ಕರೆವ ಒಂದು ದಿನ ರಮಣ ಗುರು ನನ್ನನು ತನ್ನೆದೆ ಗುಹೆಗೆ ಹೋದವರಾರು ಹಿಂದಕ್ಕೆ ಬಾರದ ಊರಿನ ಸುವರ್ಣ ಭವನದಲ್ಲಿ ಹೋದವರಾರು ಹಿಂದಕ್ಕೆ ಬಾರದ ಊರಿನ ಸುವರ್ಣ ಭವನದಲ್ಲಿ ಜ್ಞಾನರೂಪಿ ಶ್ರೀ ರಮಣನ ಸಭೆಯಲಿ ಜ್ಞಾನರೂಪಿ ಶ್ರೀ ರಮಣನ ಸಭೆಯಲಿ ಪತಿಯ ಜೊತೆಗಿರಲು ಸುಖದಲ್ಲಿ ಕರೆವ ಒಂದು ದಿನ ರಮಣ ಗುರು ನನ್ನನು ತನ್ನೆದೆ ಗುಹೆಗೆ ನೋಡಿಯು ವರ್ಣಿಸಲಾಗದ ಸುಂದರ ದರ್ಶನ ದೊರೆಯುವ ತಾಣಕ್ಕೆ ಕರೆವ ಒಂದು ದಿನ ರಮಣ ಗುರು ನನ್ನನು ತನ್ನೆದೆ ಗುಹೆಗೆ ನನ್ನನು ತನ್ನೆದೆ ಗುಹೆಗೆ ನನ್ನನು ತನ್ನೆದೆ ಗುಹೆಗೆ. ನಮೋ ರಮಣ. We will now have the sharing and reading by Sri Nandakumar sir from Western Seekers.
Namo Ramana. In this, our book reading segment of the Satsangh, we get back to reading from Fresh Discoveries, Western Seekers on Sri Ramana Maharshi, a compilation by our founder president A.R. Natarajanji. For the last few weeks, we have been going through the account of Alfred Sorensen, also called as Shunyata Baba. We find him to be very mystical in his writing, and also that he combines both Buddhism and Vedanta in his description. So we trudge on and we go to the segment. There are two more segments. This segment is called Shunya Experiencing 2. Do not try to stop or to still the ego dust and duality sediments forcefully or willfully. So the suggestion from Shunyata Baba is that force or willfulness is not to be used in the final removal of the ego dust or the sediments of duality. That dust has to be removed with gentleness. The very gentleness indicates the residing place of the dhyana, where we are going to rest, is not use of force. So the last few dust particles are to be removed like that in very gentle way, and Bhagavan used to be called by Grandaf as gentler than gentleness itself. So Shunyata Baba is saying, do not be forceful in your Atma Vichara as you go on. Be gentle with yourself, the ego dust, as well as the sediments of duality. No use to conquer or kill Sri mind or the bumptious ego soul. Simply let be, let go, and be still to be. Still to awaken maturely and abidingly, and thus be the conscious awareness, the actual form-free Sahaja Samadhi, the darshan in Swalila. This paragraph is giving us the importance of the gentleness towards the sadhana's maturity as we go on. The gentleness with which we remove the thought itself indicates the final resting place of the self, the Sahaja Samadhi, to be the supreme gentleness itself. Enlightenment is not jnana knowing or vijnana understanding, not assertion in dogma, gospel, doctrine, or intellectual erudition. But enlightenment is a free, joyous ease in all this and in this Swalila play. So what is enlightenment according to Shunyata Baba? It is not jnana knowing, I know, or vijnana knowing, the description of your way to jnana, or the assertion that no, this is the right thing, that is not right, or saying so and so has said, therefore this is the gospel you have to follow, this is the doctrine, or show intellectual erudition, the nuances of intellectual argument, just display that. It is not any of this, but it is the free and joyous ease. That ease with which you do all these things. That ease with which you do your day-to-day living. That ease is the indication of enlightenment, says Shunyata Baba. These is a merging and emerging and time-free movements, an existential leap from the known and the understood to the unknowable and ineffable Sahaja experiencing. So how is this ease going to be finally fruitful? Where we clearly move from the known. Known means there is a beginning and end to that knowledge. Whereas The Sahaja experience has no beginning, no end, it is ineffable. How do you abide in that, or what is abiding in that? It is the ease with which the discrete knowing is all dropped. Freedom is in self-awareness, in conscious self-play, or in aware unconsciousness. The awakening is a simple, natural, mature, and essential experiencing in the integral psyche and integration of the ego soul. So another way of looking at enlightenment is self-awareness, self-playing, or aware unconscious. As Bhagavan would say, be aware of your deep sleep state. Be with total jagrat, bring in the deep sleep state. So aware unawareness or unaware unconsciousness. The awakening is a simple, natural, mature, and essential experiencing in the integral psyche. There, why this is called as integral psyche is that now our psyche is made up of some broken up parts, and outside our psyche there are many things which we see, which we perceive. We perceive somebody is having this fault, that person is jealous, this person is angry, that person is essentially cunning. So there are these things we see outside the psyche, but in the Jnani's psyche there is nothing outside. Everything has been called in, the good, the bad, the ugly, the limited, everything is brought into that, and everything is within me, nothing outside me. Velividayam vittu vilangum arunesa. That is called the integrated psyche, because all the limited entities are now integrated and taken in and consumed, and then only the psyche can shine limitlessly. The integral psyche and integration of the ego soul. Ramana Maharshi said unto us, we are always aware. Yes, we are the awareness, the Swadarshan, the self-experiencing, in and beyond duality, triputis and ego consciousness. We are that self-awareness which is present even when we are seeing these limited things, and even when we don't see any of these limited things of duality, triputi, or ego consciousness. Now he moves to Zen Buddhism. Zen Buddhism begins with this simple awakening in self-radiance. In Advaita mode, you simply introvert, contemplate, and reflect purely. In Zen Buddhism, it is said that the best place to begin your enlightenment, the hill of enlightenment, the best place to be for climbing the hill of enlightenment is to be at the top. That is the place to begin, Zen Buddhism says. So that is what he mentions here. Zen Buddhism begins with this simple awakening of self-radiance. There your starting point itself is there. So whatever else comes, you keep dropping it. In Advaita mode, you simply introvert, you turn inward, contemplate and reflect purely. You are the contemplating. You are not the contemplated, you are the contemplating. Sri ego soul merges in prana, in prajna karuna play. The prajna karuna is one of the phrases he has developed. Then the ego, what it does in this contemplation, the I thought, it goes and merges in the sahaja samadhi, the prajna karuna. We are the we-free, ego-free, non-dual Advaita contemplation. Who are we? Who am I? I am that we-free, the free from multiplicity, ego-free, non-dual Advaita contemplation. Meditation, from here on, he goes to show us how we should not latch on to the words, because words are just symbols and they can change in their meaning. Today, one word may mean something, but a few days down the road, the usage may change. So he says, don't go for the word, go for the anubhavam. So that is the content of the next paragraph. Meditation, like other key word symbols such as love and God, soul, knowledge and power, has lost its salt and original meaning and has become rather mental and implying concentration and exclusion. So the word meditation or contemplation might mean something today. It might have meant something else sometime back. So don't go for the word, go for the actual practice. The actual ease with which everything is done, everything is integrated. And behold, such lovely Greek concepts and experiences as theoria, philosophia. Theoria, philosophia is, theoria means contemplation. That's what the dictionary says. Philosophia is love of truth. So the Greek words, at least initially they meant, theoria, philosophia meant contemplation and love for truth, or contemplation with the love for truth. But today philosophy may mean a totally different thing. Oh, that fellow is a philosopher means he is totally disconnected with truth. He is disconnected with reality at a particular level. So don't go by just the words, but go by actual sadhana and actual anubhava. What does love mean? What does knowledge mean? What does ease with doing everything mean? What a come down in English. So our concepts and word symbols live and die and change. And it is unwise to cling or stick to them or to anything. Just don't stick to anything. Go directly for the anubhavam of awareness, for which you don't need to cling to anything. To an English soul, meditation means little more than deep thought and reflection. Whereas in Buddhist psychology, dhyana is rather an ego-free mode of consciousness, a self-contemplation or unity awareness, which in maturity is ultimate and universal, an abiding, integral and conscious unity in and beyond the act of union or ego or duality consciousness. So now we are getting a pattern of Sorensen. More or less, he has this method of taking us through mysticism to the truth by using these terms that in maturity is ultimate, universal, and abiding, integral, and a conscious unity in and beyond the act of union or ego or duality consciousness. There is no you to experience, no I to contemplate on, but name-free, form-free Sahaja Samadhi. So the ultimate place is the name-free, form-free Sahaja Samadhi. All modes of contemplation or trances, visions or mere unions. So Sahaja Samadhi is the union of the individual soul with the limitless the consciousness or awareness of the self. So that is the Samadhi experience. There are 12 or 20 types of Samadhi. All this, he says, let us just take it as the union of the two. Don't go into the various types and analysis of them. They are neither darshan nor integral freedom in things, in tools and in play. Therefore, Shankara's, Buddha's and Ramana Maharishi's emphasis on Sahaja Samadhi. So all these three, Shankara, Buddha and Ramana Maharishi, they insist on something called as Sahaja Samadhi. Sahaja Samadhi means natural abidance in the union of the limited self with the limitless self. In fact, Bhagavan asks, has any division come about? What is vichara or what is jnana? Bhagavan says, yoga implies the union of the limited with the limitless. Whereas jnana is an inquiry whether the division has come about at all. See whether the division has come. The division has not at all come. Nothing has affected the Supreme. Nothing can affect the Supreme. The Supreme Self is as it always is. There are no English equivalents for the integral experiencing we call Advaita, Sahaja Samadhi, Swadarshan, Swalila, nor even Swadharma, which is our chief concern. There are no English equivalents. Therefore, Sorensen sir has gone ahead and created many words that are new. Swalila, Swadarshana, all these he has created to encourage us to go for actual experiencing. Meditation from media-free focusing, image-free contemplation, and integral merging has come to imply concentration, discrimination, and exclusiveness. What is actually meditation? Meditation is media-free focusing. Media-free focusing means the division between the two of us, it goes. This mediation is not there. When we remove the mediation, then Ninan Arappuli Nidangali Mahima. The gap between Arunachala and I, it goes away once the media is not there. So what is meditation? Meditation is removal of what separates Arunachala and me, what separates you and me. It is integral merging. It is something I see outside, I should integrate it inside. That then the merger of the outside and inside comes. Now today what it has come to be, the same meditation, which is actually co-mingling of the subject and the object, has come to mean concentration, discrimination and exclusiveness. No, that is not this like that. So don't go by the word alone. Go by the actual practice, the ease with which the commingling of the subject and object takes place. In Purna contemplation or co-passion means self-meditation, he says. Co-passion, not compassion. Compassion means somebody else is there. This is a new word he is coining. Co-passion means it is just being self-meditative, being aware of oneself. That is what he calls as co-passion. In Purna contemplation or co-passion, one has to be. The universe grows the I. When you are self-contemplative, what happens to the I? As Einstein says, this I is an optical illusion. We consider this body, this set of thoughts to be I. He says it is an optical illusion. And what is sadhana? Sadhana is expansion of the I so that it includes all. So that is what Sorensen is saying. He's saying, Shunyata Baba is saying that when you are self-aware, then what has happened to that I? It is not limited to the body or the set of thoughts which you thought were yours, but it expands to include all beings. The universe grows the I. Ego blinds and duality divisions vanish, and simply we are more than all these universes and free in all divine concepts and supernal word symbols. Self-experiencing is this freeness. Pindam meviya nadane, Brahmandam meviya nadana. Comes this statement from Satyamangalam Venkatramana in this Ramana Sadguru song. Pindam meviya nadane. The one who is now occupying this body is the very same awareness which is filling this entire cosmos. If one is turned inward without any object attraction, then that self-attentive consciousness has expanded infinitely. Whatever may be the object, known, unknown, or intermediate, everything is covered by that consciousness. That consciousness which is self-aware has expanded to cover everything. I'll read that again. Ego blinds, duality divisions vanish, and simply we are more than all these universes. The universes are just aggregation of limitation, whereas self-aware consciousness has gone beyond all aggregations. Self-experiencing is this freedom from all limitations. Usually we favor Sri Sharma's word symbols, translations and general interpretation of Sri Ramana Maharshi in Mahayoga. Lakshman Sharma is whom he is referring to. In general, whoever may have translated Ramana Maharshi's own words seem clear and consistent in term symbols. So he is saying that if you read these works of Lakshman Sharma or the original collected works, you won't get into the confusion of what word means anything. If you go to outside books, some other people referring, then you may not exactly know what a particular word means. But in Bhagavan's original words and in Lakshman Sharma's translation, he says, the words, you can very clearly understand what they mean. We disfavor Suzuki's use of mind or self. Suzuki is the reference to D.T. Suzuki, a Zen master who was known in those times, went and settled down in London and wrote a lot about Zen Buddhism and spread Zen Buddhism to the West. We disfavored Suzuki's use of mind or self, for self. There are many minds, but only one self, along in and beyond oneness and loneliness. Mind is the trouble, the usurper, especially in the West, and is almost synonymous with the ego. Ego-ridden mind might well be mind-ridden ego. They are also alike in fussy yogic power antics. So he says, be careful about the word usages, because if you just compare the mere works of these, you may get confused, because what Suzuki means by mind maybe the self in Vedanta. So when you are reading some work, be clear what those words are used for. Better still stick to these original teachings, original collected works, and Lakshman Sharma's translation, at least that is the name he is using, so that we don't mistake one word for another. Yet, why tease or kill the poor things, when we can awaken and be free in the ego, in the self-ego, and in clever mind. Only still fussy mind, thoughts and ego, only harmonize inner stances as well as circumstances and reflect purely, integrally, and essentially in co-passion. Then dawns the Himalayan consciousness, the self-radiant silence. Ramana Maharshi did not love it. He ever is it, consciously aware. Bhagavan did not love the self. He is the self. Zen or self-search leads to this mature and abiding awakening into conscious awareness, into mature integrality in and beyond phenomena. The self is the death-free reality in ever-changing forms, the changing and interpenetration in Swalila. Is there an unreal self or a selfless self? Which self manifests? We seem to remember Ramana Maharshi and Advaita saying a selfless self is a contradiction in terms, like spiritual suffering, and that there is nothing like realization. Bhagavan says there is nothing like realization. Who can realize, make real that which is eternally real, here and now, implying that the self does not become, evolve, or manifest, but the self ever is. It is Sri Ego who matures and awakens into its own nothingness. Ego oblivion is self-awareness. That is how the chapter ends. Who can realize, make real the real here? Who can make real? It is always real, implying that the self does not become, evolve, or manifest, but the self always ever is. It is Sri Ego, it is the same ego on self-inquiry, who matures and awakens into its own nothingness. Nokiye karudi ni takiye pakkuvam akini under. The sadhana with grace matures into self-awareness. Ego oblivion, the oblivion or complete erasing of the ego is identical with self-realization. Om Namo Bhagavate Shri Ramana.
Namo Ramana. We will now have self-inquiry session conducted by Dilip sir. We begin with reading of Bhagavan's Upadesha, and the practice will also be conducted by Sri Dilip Sinha.
Namo Ramana. Dhyayet Sharada Chandra Sundaramukam Tamraravindekshana Bhaktabhishtavarabhayapradakaram Kaupinamatrojjvalam Swatmanandarasanubhuti vivasham Sarva श्रीमन्तं श्रीरमणीश्वरं गुरुवरं योगासनाध्यासितं ध्यायेत् श्रीरमणीश्वरम् ध्यायेत् श्रीरमणीश्वरम् ध्यायेत् श्रीरमणीश्वरम्. Namo Ramana. We will commence today's evening Atma Vichara session by listening to Bhagavan's Upadesham. As usual, I will be reading from Guru Vachaka Kovai, and today we are going to read from the chapter Meditation on the Truth, and the topic blessed by Bhagavan is obstacles. Verse 617. Many afflictions, like thunderbolts, heavily oppress excellent and virtuous devotees. You should know that this happens not to torment them, but to firmly establish and make resilient in tapas the mind of those pure ones. I repeat, many afflictions, like thunderbolts, heavily oppress excellent and virtuous devotees. You should know that this happens not to torment them, but to firmly establish and make resilient in tapas the mind of those pure ones. It is often found that the good people go through a lot more challenges, and the people who put many people at trouble are thriving in this world. It is often the experience. Purandaradasa also says, Satyavantaragidu Kalavalla. The people who are truthful, it doesn't seem that this world is for them, or it's not a good time for them. Whereas Bhagavan is very clearly saying here, these afflictions which come on the good people, the one who are pure in their mind, like thunderbolts, is only to make us firmly establish and become resilient in tapas. The water is often considered as the most resilient element. If you take a rock, compared to the rock, the water is most soft. But when the water is continuously falling on a rock, then it makes the hole through the rock. The resilience of that water to be persistent, like the Ajyadhara, by continuously flowing, can even make a hole in that rock, which when we really see in a normal scientific or a normal way, we see that the water is very soft, whereas the rock is very hard. But the resilient, the continuous flowing of it, how it makes through, it breaks through the rock and arrives at the freedom. Likewise, Bhagavan is saying, though all this affliction come to the good ones, the only purpose of it is, by divine design, is only to make us firmly establish and become resilient in tapas. And in tapas, when Bhagavan says, and he has very clearly stated what tapas is to Ganapati Muni, the tapas is to be at the source. And Ganapati Muni approached Bhagavan and asked what is tapas. Then he said that when you go to the source of where the mantra rises, or where the I, rises within that, that is real tapas. So what Bhagavan is saying is, all these afflictions that come is only going to make us abide in the self, become one with that self, and therefore we need not have to worry. It is another way, like this question was asked by, similar question was asked by Varsha, my daughter, to me, and I was telling that when parents shout at a child for something, we may think that it is actually a shouting, but it is in love. It's another expression of love. It is another expression of love and care and concern towards the child. But it is all one and the same. So the mind may make it think that it is a shouting, not in a pleasant expression. But ultimately the objective, as we saw from the Shunyata Bhava's explanation, is only to make us abide in that reality which we already are. As he concludes, that it's the ego's annihilation that brings out the truth which is already present. The self doesn't have to go through any changes, anything. It is already whole and complete here and now. It is just that limitation, that ego identity which was there, which was having a limitation in the unlimited, has to annihilate itself, recognize that it is the obstruction in the free flow of that self, and simply dissolve. And to make that ego, it's the ego itself which goes through these afflictions. So the afflictions only make the ego recognize its limitation and completely annihilate itself, so that the tapas happens, so that the self shine force, that unit force which is there in everything shine forth automatically. So for us to achieve that, Bhagavan has categorically said all thoughts are only afflictions. But he has not made that only certain things are afflictions. He has said all thoughts are only afflictions. So we should consider every thought as an opportunity to become resilient. So in order to make that happen, Bhagavan has given us this direct path of Atma Vichara, wherein he says, no matter how many thoughts come, and no matter what is the quality of the thought, whether it is good, bad, or ugly, we need not have to go into it. We should simply recognize it's an affliction that has come for the peace which is already there. So what we need to do is inquire, to whom is this thought? And the moment we inquire that, we recognize this thought has only come to me, not for anybody else. And thereupon we should inquire, who am I? What do I really refer to as I? And when we try to go to the source of that I thought, or the real I, what do I really refer to as I within me? When we go to the source, then we see that the self, we are taken to the self by the grace which alone is. When the ego tries to search its own source, then the ego annihilates itself, and the source alone actually shines forth. Initially, as Bhagavan has said, the staying in the source may not be for a longer period of time, and there may not be a proper recognition of it either. But Bhagavan assures, with repeated practice, then the mind becomes steadily abiding in the self, which alone is. So repeated practice, repeated inquiry is important. So Bhagavan has given this direct path of Atma Vichara, which takes us from the limited to the unlimited nature of ours. And with the immense grace of Bhagavan, which alone could have made this possible for us to have come to this path, which alone makes us comprehend the path, which alone makes us even practice the path, which alone finally also results in that steady abidance in the truth. With holding and Atma Vichara is only a way to invoke that grace, only to surrender this ego to that grace. With that grace, let us do Atma Vichara for the next 10 minutes. Namo Bhagavate Shri Ramanaya. Namo Ramana. Thank you.
Namo Ramana. We will now have a sharing by Venkatesh Deshpande. He'll be talking about Bhagavad Gita Sara.
Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kansachanuramardhanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum. Om Shantakaram Bhujagashenam Padmanabham Suresham Vishwadharam Gaganasudrisham Meghavarnam Shubhangam Lakshmikantam Kamalanayanam Yogiradhyanagamyam Vande Vishnum Bhavayharam Sarvalokaikanaatham. Om. We're doing Manana on Bhagavad Gita Sara, and we have reached the 38th verse, which is from chapter 3, verse number 17. I request Sapna to kindly chant the verses, please.
Yes, sir. Ata Srimad Bhagavad Gita Saraha Yastvatmaratirev Syat Atmatruptascha Manavaha Atmanyeva cha Santushtaha Tasya Karyam na Vidyate Yastvatmaratirev Syat Atmatruptascha Manavaha Atmanyeva cha Santushtaha Tasya Karyam na Vidyate. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Sapna. For the one who takes delight in the self, who is gratified with the self, and is content in the self, there is no duty left to be performed. Read that again. For the one who takes delight in the self, who is gratified with his self, and is content in the self, there is no duty left to be performed. The one who is established in the knowledge of the self has his self only and does not have delight in any worldly objects or possessions. Because many speakers earlier have told about the same thing, that the great ones, the one who are in dhyana, does not worry about the worldly objects or possessions. He is satisfied by his self alone, and he does not depend on food, drinks, etc. to get satisfied. So nothing externally will satisfy him. Normally one gets happiness through external object, but the knower of the self is happy and content to remain in the self without any expectations from external objects. Such a one has no duty left to be performed, but is absolutely free. No injunctions apply to him. According to Ashtavakra, a Jivan Mukta is like a leaf which is fully dried up. A dry leaf cannot shrink further nor make any movement whatsoever. When once the wind blows, it may make the dry leaf fly and fall down at another place. So when the wheel of samsara, the phenomenal world, moves, the wind emanating therefrom may move the Jivan Mukta, and it will look as if he is engaged in some duty. So what Sri Krishna says is, while hearing Sri Krishna extol the need to act in this world, many of us, whether we admit it or not, may want to know whether there is an exception to this instruction. In other words, are there any circumstances where we do not need to perform actions anymore? Krishna gives the answer in this shloka. If we examine ourselves, we will realize that we derive pleasure and satisfaction from external sources, material objects, people, relationships, and so on. Pleasant memories, which can be considered internal to us, do give us joy, but were generated from some external source in the past. But in reality, the source of happiness is the absence of desires experienced when we finally attain a material object. For instance, if you want to buy a new shirt, a desire is created in the mind. Till such time that we get the shirt, we will be unhappy because of that desire. But once the desire is fulfilled, we experience happiness for a brief period of time. Is that happiness caused by the shirt or by the temporary absence of desire? The wise person knows that it is the latter. So what is being said here is, we have to understand this clearly, is, but once the desire is fulfilled, when you buy the shirt, we experience happiness for a brief period. Is that happiness caused by the shirt or by the temporary absence of desire? The wise think that is the temporary absence of desire. So the shloka makes a bold statement. It says that till we derive pleasure and satisfaction from external things external to us, we have to act in this world. Conversely, one who has no longer derives pleasure and satisfaction from external sources does not need to act in this world. He revels in the eternal essence which he has learned to recognize within himself. He no longer has to look outside for happiness. So somebody may think, is there a contradiction here? Earlier it was mentioned that if one is human, one has to act. But here it is mentioned that the realized individual does not need to act. The answer is that once that individual has understood the true source of happiness, he loses the sense of doership. In other words, the notion that I am doing this action goes away. So, for example, if you truly love painting and have mastered all the skills, then your painting becomes effortless and spontaneous. You experience a feeling that some people call being in the zone. In fact, there may come a time or a stage where you will feel that the hand is moving by itself and the painting is happening on its own. Similarly, all the actions of this wise individual become like the spontaneous painting. Tulsidas also says that when the soul separated itself from God, the material energy covered in it in an illusion. By virtue of that illusion, it began thinking of itself as the body, and ever since, in forgetfulness of itself, it has been experiencing immense misery. The karma duties prescribed for the materially conditioned souls are no longer applicable to such illumined souls, because they have already attained the goal of all such karma. For example, as long as one is a college student, one is obliged to follow the rules of the university. But for one who has graduated and earned the degree, the rules now become irrelevant. Such a liberated soul, it is said, those who have united themselves with God now walk on the head of the Vedas. They have no need to follow the rules of the Vedas any longer. The goal of the Vedas is to help. This is very important, that also was spoken about. The goal of the Vedas is to help unite the soul with God. Once the soul becomes God-realized, The rules of the Vedas which help the soul reach the destination now no longer apply. The soul has transcended their area of jurisdiction. For example, a Pandit unites a man and woman in wedlock by performing the marriage ceremony. Once the ceremony is over, he says, "You are now husband and wife. I am leaving." His task is over. If the wife says, "Panditji, the vows you made us take during the marriage ceremony are not being followed by my husband," the Pandit will reply, "That is not my area of expertise. My duty was to get you both united in marriage, and that work is done. That is over." Similarly, the Vedas are there to help us unite the self with the Supreme Self. When God realization takes place, the task of the Vedas is over. Such an enlightened soul is no longer obliged to perform the Vedic duties. So what Bhagwan Sri Krishna is saying is, only those who have given up desires for external objects can rejoice and be satisfied in the self. So the root of bondage is our material desires. This should happen, that should not happen. Sri Krishna explains a little further ahead that desire is the cause of all sins. Consequently, it must be renounced. So the important thing that is being spoken about in this verse is that a person who is always abiding in the self, who does not have any ichhas, no wants, nothing to say, "I want this, I want that," but he's happy with the self, being with the self. Then so anything that happens is he sees as the will of God. So even he looks at himself as an instrument of the Lord, and then nothing matters. He's contented with whatever happens. Why is he contented with whatever happens? Because he realizes this, everything is only the consciousness, everything is in only the self, and that whatever is happening is also only your projection. It's also the consciousness and nothing but the consciousness. And there's no reality to whatever is happening in the material world. It is just like a movie that's happening on the consciousness. So he revels only in the self. And once he revels in the self, he is in constant bliss. So may Bhagwan make us all abide in the self and be fearless and free. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya.
Namo Ramana. We will now have Dr. Kalarani Rangaswamy sharing with us Devi Kalotara Jnanachara Vichara Padalam.
Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. அருணாச்சலமென அகமே நினைப்பவர் அகத்தை பேரறுப்பாய் அருணாச்சலம். Namo Ramana to all. With the infinite grace of Bhagwan Sri Ramana Maharshi, we are meditating on Devi Kalotra Jnana Vichara Padalam, very graciously given to us by Ramana. And in the last satsang we learned that Dhiman Sittam Paramam Prajnayinan. Here, Paramam Prajnay means Prajna of the existence of Nirvishaya Paraswarupa. When there is no oscillation of mind, it merges, abides in the Purna Swarupa. And when the mind rises from that state only, there is some oscillation. Once in the ashram, when Bhagwan was there was a squirrel's nest near Bhagwan. The young ones of the squirrel were residing there. When they were babies, they were inside the nest only. But when they got little strength, they started coming out of the nest. Bhagwan used to say, "Hey, stay inside only. then only you will all be safe. You are behaving like human mind. It often comes out thinking that happiness is outside only. But they does not know they will be in danger when they come out. So, when the mind abides in the self itself, there will be no problem at all. There was a great jnani. Normally, he won't be doing any work. He'll be sitting in Nishtha doing dhyana. One day what happened? His father was to go to the next town for some important work. So he asked his son, this jnani, to do his job in the palace. And his duty was night watchman. This son also accepted and went to the palace. Normally, watchmen used to make some sound and they will say para in those days. Even now also we can see watchmen making some sound with their whistle, blowing whistles or showing torchlight like that, isn't it? Likewise, in those days also, they'll be saying something and conclude with para. And this jnani also said, but the words from his mouth woke all from their ajnanam by his announcement. He said, "O great people, beware of the thieves, the thief of desire, Jagrada. Otherwise, they will come and steal the gem which is inside you. O great one, beware of the thief of Kama, and please wake up. Otherwise, this thief will also steal the gem which is within you. O great ones, beware of the thieves of Macharya, and please wake up. And O great ones, beware of the thieves of Krodha, and otherwise this thief will also come and steal the gem that is within you." King, hearing these words, confirmed that this is not the regular watchman. So in the morning he called that regular watchman and inquired, "What happened? You didn't come yesterday." That fellow got frightened. "Yes, oh my lord, I had an important work to do in the next town. So I went there. So my son was doing my duty. I'm really sorry if he had done any mistake or if he had not done his duty properly." The king said, No, don't worry. Please call your son. I want to get Upadesam from him. And the king became his disciple. So, if one wants to be away from the desire, kama, krodha, madam, acharya, one has to abide oneself in the self. So, in this stanza, Bhagavan says, a buddhiman will have to withdraw his mind from Vishaya Jnana and see that the mind stabilizes with Purna Swarupa and feel the existence alone. And in the next stanza, Bhagavan says about the feeling of that existence. How will it be? Anda egantattu adayum sugam aduve. The worldly object which are seen differently will be seen as one, as same, as equal. And what remains is the self alone. And that is Ekantam. In Ribu Gita, it is said, Vedamura palavidamai pesi enna, pirivatra, aganda, para brahmam dane madava nin nijamana swarupam. What is the use of talking about different objects and the discrimination in the world? Actually, is there any discrimination? There is only Akanda Para Brahman. and that is your Nija Swarupa, isn't it? And lack of this awareness makes a man greedy, desirous, not ready to forgive anyone, showing anger, hatred, etc., etc. I'll tell you an example. In the story of 3 intelligent sons, there was a rich father who was in his deathbed, and he will call all his 3 sons and he says, listen carefully, my dear sons. When I'm dead, while burying me, each of you must keep 1 lakh in my coffin and then bury me. They accepted, and in few days the father dies, and the first one and the second son kept 1 lakh in the coffin as promised. The third one came. What he did was, he wrote a check for 3 lakhs, kept in his father's coffin, and took the 2 lakhs kept by his brothers. It showed his intelligence, no wonder. But at the same time, his greediness is also seen. Why this sort of behavior? Because of seeing the world as different, as Anya. When Anya Bhava is removed and Ananya Bhava fills its place, all will be seen equal, and in that state, self alone shines, and that is Paravali, the infinite space. And Bhagavan says, the happiness, Ananda, that is attained in that state is incomparable. And Ekantathe Adayum Sugam Aduve. You can't compare that happiness with any happiness that is being attained in this worldly happenings. Then that is it. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya.
Namo Ramana. We will now have a sharing by Sri Ujjwal Jagadish on Ramanacentre.
Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Gurave Tarakaraye, Gurave Tarakaraye, Gurave Tarakaraye, Gurave Tarakaraye, Paradeshi Neva Davalena Vasasaha Shakalena Veshtita Kati Vishobhina Varadeshikena Naravesha Dharina Shikivaha Nena Guru Majagad Bhavet Gurave Tarakaraye, Gurave Tarakaraye, Guruve Tarakaharane, Guruve Tarakaharane, Yatiyagi Tiruguva Arunagiri Vasanu Bili Tundu Batteyanu Dharisi Jwalipanu Guru Shreshta Muruti Naravesha Dharisi Hanu Navileri Davaniga Navileri Davaniga Navileri Davaniga Daraya Pureya Lili Hanu Guruve Tarakaharane Guruve Tarakaharane. In this verse of Ramanacentre written by Ganapati Muni, he sings of Bhagavan as Paradeshi. The Paradeshi, the one foreigner to us, to mean that he is the divine one, he is from the divine plane. That's such a divine one who rides on a peacock, Shiki Vahanena, the one whose mount is a peacock. he has come in the form of a yati, and he is staying and moving around at the Arunachala hill, and he is just wearing a kaupinam and shining gloriously, and he is the one who has come as the blessing. He is none other than that supreme God who killed the Tarakasura, says Ganapati Muni. Here the word Paradeshi literally means the one from a different country, a foreigner. This is to mean that in the last paragraph, Ganapati Muni told that he has left the lap of Girija, who stays at Kailasa, and he has come down to us from his plane of immortality. He has come amidst us with these mortals. As what? As Guru he has come. And to tell this, he has termed Bhagavan Ramana as Paradeshi. But this reminds me of an experiment which Sri Nandakumar ji shared with us in one of our workshop. It is an experiment by Carl Satsangh, where he tells us to imagine a world, a flat world, where everything is made up of two-dimensional objects. Two-dimensional is they have length, they have breadth, but they don't have any height. They're all flat. In this flat world, people are moving around, and they're all doing their activities. The activities that they can do is they can move forward, they can move backwards, they can move right, and they can move left. But they don't have a concept of up and down because they don't have height. It is a two-world, a flat world, a 2D world. In this 2D world, once out of the compassion, a 3D object, which the scientist, he represents by an apple. Apple comes, and this apple wants to interact with these people of the 2D world. And this apple, when it wants to talk to this person, a special person whom it has chosen in the 2D world, the 2D world person is not able to understand this object completely. What he can see is only a shadow of the apple, only the intersection of this 3D object, that is the apple, and he is not able to understand the fullness of this object, and he is wondering, what is this actually which is talking to me, which is so dear to me, and it is telling me something which is beyond my understanding. What is this? And out of the compassion, this apple, the 3D object, blesses this 2D person an experience of the up, an experience of being up into the 3D, 3 dimension, and to see the two world in a new perspective. And when this 2D person sees his 2D world, he is amazed. He sees the world in a new perspective, and he comes back to this 2D world and wants to share his experience with his 2D friends. And the 2D friends are not able to understand what he is telling. They are telling, please point out where you are able to see this thing. And the 2D person is unable to experience this, unable to express his experience of the 3 dimension. And Carl Satsangh continues saying that we are all living in this world, caught up in this world of 3D. We have length and breadth and height. So we are caught up in this 3D world, and we are not able to understand the higher dimension. And out of compassion, Bhagavan Ramana, who belongs to a dimension which is beyond all the dimensions, which is the basis of all the dimensions, it is told that the higher dimension includes and it transcends all the lower dimensions. Bhagavan Ramana, who is beyond all dimensions, who is beyond this dimension of body that we think, he is beyond the dimension of breath, he is beyond the dimension of the manas, our thoughts and our mind, he is beyond beyond the dimension of the intellect, and beyond the dimension of the ignorance to that self which pervades all these 5 dimensions that we think we are made up of. That self has taken a human form and come amidst us as the Sadguru, and he is shining, just wearing a kaupina at the Arunagiri. And for what purpose? He seems to be a Paradeshi, but he is not the Paradeshi. He is the one who has come into our lives, who is actually belonging to us. He is our self, and he is telling, this is not this world that you think is real is not your country. You belong to that dimension where from I come from. So he has come to take us back to our true homes. And this reminds me of a Vedantic story which we have presented in one of our dance ballet, Hamsa, where a lioness is pregnant with a lion cub inside her womb. And in hunger, she comes to the village and she's trying to attack one of the sheep and catch hold of the sheep in the herd of sheep. And in that process, she gives birth to a lion cub. And the villagers come with the fire and sticks, and the lioness is afraid, and she moves back to her forest, to her home, leaving back this lion cub amidst the sheep. And the little lion cub wakes up in the morning and sees that it is surrounded by these sheep, and it thinks that it is also a sheep, and the sheep mother, out of its compassion, she takes care of this lion cub also. And this lion cub slowly grows with the sheep, learns how to bleat just like the sheep, and learns how to be afraid of things, how to be afraid of wild animals, how to be afraid of lion. And these are the lessons that it learns being with the sheep. And one day, a lion comes to the village again. And this lion is about to attack the sheep, and it sees among the sheep there is one lion, and that lion is also trying to bleat in its majestic voice, and it is trying to be afraid. And this lion is surprised, and it calls that lion cub and says, "Oh, lion cub, come here. What are you doing here? You are not a sheep, you are a lion. Come with me. I will take you to your true home." And this lion cub says, no, I am not going to come with you. You are very, very tricky. You want to trick me and take me away and eat me up. I am not going to come with you, says the lion cub. And the lion, who is the father of this lion, it says, "Oh, you are my lost son. Okay, don't worry. When you are ready, you come to the forest. I will be waiting for you in your true home, the forest." And the days pass by. The lion cub is leading a life of fear and anxiety and worry. And at one point it realizes, what is the use of leading such a life filled with fear? If I can go to the forest, and if I find out that I am a lion, I am going to be free. Otherwise, I am going to die finding my freedom. So it thinks, and it leaves the group of sheep and it goes to the forest. And in the forest, the lion father is very, very happy, and he says, "Oh son, you have come at last. Come." And he takes him to the nearby lake, and there the lion cub sees its own reflection. It sees that his father, lion, and it also resembling its father. At that moment, it realizes its freedom, its true nature. The Paradeshi who came was not a Paradeshi, was his own father, his own guru, who had come out of compassion and is calling us to back to that Desha which we belong to. Bhagavan Ramana, who is the mother. We are celebrating the Mother's Day tomorrow, and we are celebrating the Ramana Aradhana. The advent of Ramana, who came to us as a guru, was to take us back to our own true Desha that we belong to that dimension which we actually belong, and to take us to that identity, what we really are. He lived at Arunachala as the divine in the human form for 54 years, and we are celebrating his presence at Arunachala through the Ramana Aradhana celebration today. Salutations to that Ramana who is the mother and the guru. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya.
Namo Ramana. We will now have sharing by Dr. Shardha Natarajan on Ramana Ashtottam.
Namo Ramana. Prostrations to Ramana, shining as a self in all beings. By the abundant grace of that self manifest as Bhagavan Ramana, we are meditating on the 108 names of Bhagavan, which is called the Ramana Ashtottara Shatanamavali and has been composed by Vishwanatha Swami. And tomorrow, as Ujjwal Jagdish just told us, is the Aradhana of Bhagavan. It is the time when we can remember the love of that self which became manifest in order to show to us through the beautiful life that the manifestation is immaterial. Through the manifestation, the glory of the unmanifest was brought home to us. So Vishwanatha Swami says, Kamaniya Sucharitraya Namaha. He of the beautiful story. What can we dwell on Bhagavan's story? Vishwanatha Swami already told us about the glory of the place where he was born, the Bhuminatha Sthala. He told us about the glory of his father, Sundaramaya, about his lineage, Parashara Kula. And he told us that he had come as a great light. Mahaujase Namaha is a great light. And that light is what we are talking about. The story of that light. And it is as that light that Bhagavan came amidst us, because the time when he was born, there was this great light which was seen by the blind midwife who was in that room of his birth. And she could see an all-enveloping light. And on the day of the Aradhana, Bhagavan told everyone, where can I go? I am here. Everyone was sad. And as a great sage once asked me, one of the great people asked me, now when you go to Ramanasramam on any day and on Bhagavan's Aradhana day, do you go out of sorrow? Do you go because you feel the great presence of Bhagavan there? Do you go to celebrate his presence, or do you ever feel his absence? And his presence is felt by us wherever we turn to him. That is the greatness of his story. And he emerged in Arunachala, again displaying the great light. There was this great light, indescribable light, it is said. And yet that light was seen by many, including Srimati Sulochana Natarajan. At that time, she was at Tirunelveli and she could see with her father that light moving. There are many who today recall having seen that great light at the time of Bhagavan's Aradhana. And it was a slow, it was not like a meteor, though it is described as a meteor. They say it was like a slow arc of light. It was just moving slowly across the sky. And as it was moving, it was leaving behind a huge trail of light. The place it left was still lighted. And as it moved along, the entire path it was moving along was lighted until it merged into Arunachala, creating this huge path of light. And that is what is the story of Bhagavan. The Kamaniya Sucharitra is that huge path of light. As Bhagavan moves, as he moves from being a child, as he moves into being a boy, as he moves through each and every incident in his life, he leaves behind this huge beautiful trail of light. And for each of us to follow that trail of light. And we will see that if later Bhagavan has told us in Upadesha Saram, Pujanam Japaschintanam Kramat, Bhagavan says these are the ways to relate to the Supreme, and he has sanctified all these with the glory of his life, with the light of his life. And he did puja. He did puja when? Only as a boy. He did puja when he went to the Kalayar temple with his friends, and he, in play, but with great love, he offered flowers, the beautiful flowers around. As a young boy, he must have picked beautiful flowers. These are for you, my Lord. These are yours. And he picked them and he gave them to him. And later he was to say to us in Devi Kalotram, every flower, even as it blooms in the tree, must be seen as an offering to the Lord. He is the master of proper placement. So seeing everything in its place is the beautiful worship of the Lord. He teaches us afterwards. In that Kamaniya Sucharitra, the japa was also there. And the chintana was there, the enquiry was there. We saw how Bhagavan inquired into the nature of death. Even as a boy of 12, he inquired about the death of his father. At that time he found out, he says, that which dies is only the body. And my father's eye has left the body. My eye is there. At that time he did not see or go deeper to recognize that my eye, father's eye, there is all just that one. And then he was to encounter through this chintana, again as a boy of 16, his own death. And he was to encounter once again his own physical death. Then he was on Tortoise Rock. And finally, he was to show to the world through this magnificence of inquiry, which he started as a boy, that there is no such thing as death. Arayir, Kalanube Yar, who is death? What is death? If scrutinized, he was to show, and this he enacted during his Aradhana, during that long illness before he dropped the body, that the body was not him, and yet there is the Kamaniya Sucharitra. It is that beautiful play of the self and its manifestation, which in Ramana Gita, Bhagavan calls the beautiful play, the coexistence of Shiva and Shakti, which cannot be explained, but which is, and each pervades, and the Shiva pervades the manifestation and expresses itself beautifully as the manifest, which is grace all along the way, every moment of the play as it unfolds. Our prostrations to Ramana on the sacred occasion of his Aradhana, which falls tomorrow, our prostrations to him, our thanks, as Muruganaswamy says, Yenna Kaimare, what can we say? How can we show our gratitude to him for revealing himself to us through this beautiful life? Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramana.
Namo Ramana. We will now have the chanting of Ramanacentre by Srimati V. Radha.
Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala, Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala Shiva, அருணாச்சலா அருணாச்சலமென அகமே நினைப்பவன் அகத்தை வேறறுப்பாய் அருணாச்சலா அழகு சுந்தரம் போல் அகமும் நீயும் முற்று அபினமாயிருப்போம் அருணாச்சலா அகம்பூம் தீர்த்தும் அககுகை சிறையாய் அமர்வித்ததென் கொள் அருணாச்சலா ஆருக்காவினை ஆடனை அகற்றிடில் அகிலம் பழித்திடும் அருணாச்சலா இப்பழி தப்புனை ஏனினை பித்தாயினி யாவிடுவார் அருணாச்சலா ஈண்டிடும் அன்னை பெரிதரு புரிவோய் இதுவோ உனதருள் அருணாச்சலா உனையே மாற்றி ஓடாதுள்ளத்தின் மேல் உறுதியாயிருப்பாய் அருணாச்சலா ஊர் சுற்றுடம் விடாதுன்னை கண்டடங்கிட உன்னழகை காட்டருணாச்சலா என்னை அழித்திப்போதென்னை கலவாவிடும் இதுவோ ஆண்மை அருணாச்சலா ஏன் இந்த உறக்கம் என்னை பிறருக்க இது உனக்கழகோ அருணாச்சலா ஐம்புல கழ்வர் அகத்தினில் புகும் போது அகத்தில் நீ இல்லையோ அருணாச்சலா ஒருவன உன்னை ஒழித்தவர் வருவார் உன் சூதே இது அருணாச்சலா அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ 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 அருணாச்சலா அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சலா அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சலா அருணாச்சலம் வாழி அன்பர்களும் வாழி அக்ஷரமண வாழி வாழி.
Namo Ramana. We will conclude today's satsang with the Ashtottara Puja to Bhagavan. The Ashtottara Puja will happen at Sri Subramanyam Sir's altar. The chanting will be done by Sri Vaibhav and Prarthana, and the second half will be chanted by Uma and Ashwini. A happy Aradhana to all of you.
नमो रमण भारद्वाज विश्वनाथ विरचितं श्रीरमणाष्टोत्तर शतनामावली अपार सच्चित् सुखवारिराशे यस्योऽपि मात्रं भुवनं समस्तं गुहाहितं तं रमणं गभीरं चिन्ताविहीनं हृदि ॐ महासेन महंसेन जाताय नमः ॐ श्रीरमणाय नमः ॐ गुरवे नमः ॐ अखण्डसंविदाकाराय नमः ॐ महौजसे नमः ॐ कारणोद्भवाय नमः ॐ जगत्पितावताराय नमः ॐ श्रीभूमिनाथस्थलोस्थिताय नमः ॐ पराशरकुलोत्तंसाय नमः ॐ सुन्दरार्यतपःफलाय नमः ॐ कमनीयसुचारित्राय नमः ॐ सहायाम्बा सहायवते नमः ॐ शोणाचलमहोलीनमानसाय नमः ॐ स्वर्णहस्तकाय नमः ॐ श्रीमद्द्वादशान्तमहास्थले लब्धविद्योदयाय नमः। ॐ महाशक्तिनिपातेन प्रबुद्धाय नमः। ॐ परमार्थविदे नमः। ॐ तीव्राय नमः। ॐ पितृपदान्वेषिणे नमः। ॐ इन्दुमौळिना पितृमते नमः। ॐ पितुरादेशतः शोणशैलं प्राप्ताय नमः। ॐ तपोमयाय नमः। ॐ उदासीनाय नमः। ॐ महायोगिने नमः। ॐ महोत्साहाय नमः। ॐ कुशाग्रदिये नमः। ॐ शान्तसङ्कल्पसम्रम्भाय नमः। ॐ सुसन्दृशे नमः। ॐ सवित्रे नमः। ॐ स्थिराय नमः। ॐ तपःक्षपितसर्वाङ्गाय नमः। ॐ फुल्लाम्बुजविलोचनाय नमः। ॐ चन्द्रिकासितहासश्रीमण्डिताननमण्डलाय नमः। ॐ चूतवाट्यां समासीनाय नमः। ॐ चूडिताखिलविभ्रमाय नमः। ॐ वेदवेदान्ततत्त्वज्ञाय नमः। ॐ चिन्मुद्रिणे नमः। ॐ त्रिगुणातिगाय नमः। ॐ विरूपाक्षगुहावासाय नमः। ॐ विराजतचलाकृतये नमः। ॐ उद्दीप्तनयनाय नमः। ॐ पूर्णाय नमः। ॐ रचिताचलताण्डवाय नमः। ॐ गम्भीराय नमः। ॐ परमाचार्याय नमः। ॐ सुप्रसन्नाय नमः। ॐ अभयप्रदाय नमः। ॐ दक्षिणास्य निभाय नमः। ॐ धीराय नमः। ॐ दक्षिणाभिमुखाय नमः। ॐ स्वराजे नमः। ॐ महर्षये नमः। ॐ भगवते नमः। ॐ ईड्याय नमः।
ॐ भूमविद्याविशारदाय नमः। ॐ विमलाय नमः। ॐ दीर्घदर्शिने नमः। ॐ आप्ताय नमः। ॐ ऋजुमार्गप्रदर्शकाय नमः। ॐ समदृशे नमः। ॐ सत्यदृशे नमः। ॐ सत्याय नमः। ॐ प्रशान्ताय नमः। ॐ अमितविक्रमाय नमः। ॐ सुकुमाराय नमः। ॐ सदानन्दाय नमः। ॐ मृदुभाषिणे नमः। ॐ दयार्णवाय नमः। ॐ श्री शोणाचलहृद्भूतस्कन्दाश्रमनिकेतनाय नमः। ॐ सद्दर्शनोपदेष्ट्रे नमः। ॐ सद्भक्तवृन्दपरिवृताय नमः। ॐ गणेशमुनिभृङ्गेन सेविताङ्घ्रिसरोरुहाय नमः। ॐ गीतोपदेशसाराधिग्रन्थसञ्चिन्न संशयाय नमः। ॐ वर्णाश्रममतातीताय नमः। ॐ रसज्ञाय नमः। ॐ सौम्याय नमः। ॐ आत्मवते नमः। ॐ सर्वावनिमतस्थानाम् आराध्याय नमः। ॐ सर्वसद्गुणिने नमः। ॐ आत्मारामाय नमः। ॐ महाभागाय नमः। ॐ मातृमुक्तिविधायकाय नमः। ॐ विनताय नमः। ॐ विनुताय नमः। ॐ विप्राय नमः। ॐ मुनीन्द्राय नमः। ॐ पावकोज्ज्वलाय नमः। ॐ दर्शनाजगसंहारिणे नमः। ॐ मौनेन स्वात्मबोधकाय नमः। ॐ हृच्चान्तिकरसान्निध्याय नमः ॐ स्मरणाद्बन्धमोचकाय नमः ॐ अन्तस्तिमिरचण्डांशवे नमः ॐ संसारार्णवतारकाय नमः ॐ शोणाद्रीशस्तुतिद्रष्टे नमः ॐ हार्दविद्याप्रकाशकाय नमः ॐ अविच्युतनिजप्रज्ञाय नमः ॐ नैसर्गिकमहातपसे नमः ॐ कमण्डलुधराय नमः ॐ शुभ्रकौपीनवसनाय नमः ॐ गुहाय नमः ॐ दण्डपाणये नमः ॐ कृपापूर्णाय नमः ॐ भवरोगविषग्वराय नमः ॐ स्कन्दाय नमः ॐ देवतमाय नमः ॐ अमर्त्याय नमः ॐ सेनान्ये नमः ॐ पुरुषोत्तमाय नमः।
ॐ श्रीरमण भगवते नमः। श्रीरमणाष्टोत्तरशतनामपूजां समर्पयामि। यः स्थाणोररुणाचलस्य पदयोः स्मृत्या जनिं प्राप्य तद् दिव्यानुग्रहसुप्रवाहविवशस्तादात्म्यभावं गतः हृन्निष्ठस्वगभीरनित्यतपसा लोकान् पुनास्येकराट् तस्मै श्रीरमणाय ते नम इदं लोकोत्तरज्योतिषे। नमो 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 रमण सदाशिव प्रभावरण नमो महर्षि नमो महर्षि नमो 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 रमण सदाशिव प्रभावरण नमो महर्षि नमो महर्षि दर्शन सुख मंगल मुख सकल जीवहित सम्मुख ब्रह्म संगीये नमो 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 रमण सदाशिव प्रभावरण नमो महर्षि नमो महर्षि सदा तुष्ट सदा हृष्ट सदा शिवानंद पुष्ट परम महर्षि ब्रह्मनिष्ठ समदर्शी नमो 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 रमण सदाशिव प्रभावरण नमो महर्षि नमो महर्षि ನಮ್ಮ ಮನವದೊಂದು ಕಾಡು ನೀನರಿತಿಹೆ ಅದರ ಜಾಡು ಹಿತವನರಿತು ನೀಡುತ್ತೆಮ್ಮ ಕೊರೆಯ ತಣಿಸಲೈ ಬೇಡಲೆಂದು ಬಂದ ನಾವು ನೋಡಿಯೇ ತಣಿವೆವಯ್ಯ ಮೂಡಿಗಾರನೇ ಹಿತವ ನುಡಿದು ಪೊರೆ ನಮ್ಮನು ಬ್ರಹ್ಮ ಸಂಘಿಯೇ ನಮೋ 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 ರಮಣ ಸದಾಶಿವ ಪ್ರಭಾವರಣ ನಮೋ ಮಹರ್ಷಿ ನಮೋ ಮಹರ್ಷಿ ನಮೋ 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 ರಮಣ ಸದಾಶಿವ ಪ್ರಭಾವರಣ ನಮೋ ಮಹರ್ಷಿ ನಮೋ ಮಹರ್ಷಿ। बोलो भगवान श्री रमण महर्षि की जय
जय।
नमो रमण।